Hi. I thought I would read this story about a Yazidi girl escaping from ISIS. Yeah. Okay. Oh shoot, I missed it. Okay, shoot. I apparently when I went over here, it knocked it off. Shoot. Well, I'll see if I can find it really fast here, so I don't waste your time here. But anyway, what happens is I was reading it, and it really seemed to go along with my knowledge of Islam. And since it did, I thought, I think I'll read this story. It was written by a Muslim, probably not a very good Muslim, probably a liberal Muslim. His name's Muhammad. So, yeah, I thought I would check this out. Huh. Yeah. Okay. This is what I got off of that I got off of Yahoo News. Oh yeah, here it is. This is it. I'm a 14-year-old Yazidi girl given as a gift to an ISIS commander. Here's how I escaped. Alright? Yeah, here it goes. I'll try to read quickly here and clearly, so I'm not wasting your time. Yeah. They killed my brother and tried to make me a concubine. I found a meat cleaver and broke out. Okay, this is Muhammad H. Salih. Is a journalist based in Erbil. He has covered the conflict in northern Iraq for several international news organizations. This is a story told to me by a 14-year-old Yazidi girl I'll call Naren. Currently staying in northern Iraqi Kurdistan. I'm a Kurdish journalist with a journalism degree from the University of Missouri at Columbia who covers northern Iraq as a freelance for several international news outlets. I heard about Naren's tale through a Yazidi friend who knew her. Aside from translating from Kurdish and accepting her story in collaboration with Washington Post editors, the only thing I changed are all the names, as Naren's request, to protect her and her victims from reprisal. Many of her relatives are still in captivity. As the sun rose over my dusty village on August 3rd, relatives called with terrifying news. Jihadists from the Islamic State of Iraq and al-Sham, ISIS, were coming for us. I'd expected just another day full of household tasks in Tel Uzer, a quiet spot on the western Nineveh plains of Iraq, where I lived with my family. Instead, we scrambled out of our town on foot, taking only our clothes and some valuables. After an hour of walking north, we stopped to drink from a well in the heart of the desert. Our plan was to take refuge on Mount Sinjar, along with the thousands of other Yazidis like us who were fleeing there, because we had heard a lot of stories about Islamic State brutality and what they had done to non-Muslims. They'd been converting religious minorities or simply killing them. Probably kill them if they didn't pay the jizya tax, because in Islam, it sounds like the only thing that keeps a Muslim from killing you under Sharia is if you pay the jizya tax, which is a high tax, higher than zakat. So don't let Muslims fool you. It's higher than what a Muslim pays in zakat tax. But suddenly several vehicles drew up and we found ourselves surrounded by militants wearing Islamic State uniforms. Several people screamed in horror. We were scared for our lives. I never felt so helpless in my 14 years. They had blocked our path to safety and there was nothing we could do. The militants divided us by gender and age. One young couple and one was for young and capable men, another for girls and young women, and a third for older men and women. The jihadists stole cash and jewelry from the last group and left them alone at the oasis. Then they placed the girls and women in trucks. As they drove us away, we heard gunshots. Later we learned that they were killing the young men, including my 19-year-old brother, who had married just 6 months ago. I guess they didn't pay the jizya tax, or didn't have enough money to pay the jizya tax. That afternoon they brought us to an empty school in Baj, a little town west of Mosul near the Syrian border. We met many of other Yazidi women who were captured by Islamic State. Their fathers, brothers, and husbands had all been killed. They told us. Then Islamic State fighters entered. One of them recited the words of the Shahada, the Muslim creed. I testify that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his prophet. And said that if we repeated them, we would become Muslims. But we refused. Wow, that was brave of them. They refused. I bet an atheist would have done it. Or someone who didn't take their beliefs seriously. I mean, really, if you don't take your beliefs seriously, whether if it's Catholic or Baptist, wherever, you know, it seems to me you would say it to keep your head from being sawed off. But they refused. They're brave. They were furious. They insulted us a lot and cursed us and our beliefs. A couple of days later, we were taken to a large hall full of a few dozen more Yazidi girls and women in Mosul, where Islamic State has its Iraqi headquarters. Some of the fighters were my age. They told us they were pagan. They told us we were pagans and confined us for 20 days inside the building, where we slept on the floor and ate only once per day. Every now and then an Islamic State man would come in and tell us to convert, but each time we refused. Wow, isn't that amazing? They refused. I tell you, that to me is martyr. That's a true martyr. When you refuse knowing what's going to happen to you, that's a true martyr to me. And they refused. As the faithful Yazidis, we would not abandon our religion. We wept a lot and mourned in the losses suffered by our community. Gosh, I think these women are heroes. Yeah. One day our guards separated and married. One day our guards separated and married from unmarried women. Or separated the married from unmarried women. Of course, in Islam, you can even screw married women, even in the front of their husbands who are non-believers, according to Sunan Abu Dawud 22150. Of course, there's also Sahih Muslim 832, 834. No, 834, 32, and 834, 33. But it doesn't say in the presence of their husbands, like Sunan Abu Dawud does. Muslims try to say it's only Muslims that's true, not Sunan Abu Dawud, even though Sunan Abu Dawud is also considered authentic hadith. But one day our guards separated the married women from unmarried women. My good childhood friends Shema and I were given as a gift to 2 Islamic State members from the south near Baghdad. They wanted to make us their wives or concubines. Shema was awarded to Abu Hussein, who was a cleric. I was given to an overweight, dark-bearded man, about 50 years old, who seemed to have some high rank. And she's 14. You see? Yeah. Pedophilia is fine in Islam because Muhammad porked a 9-year-old named Aisha. He went by the nickname Abu Ahmed. They drove us down to their home in Fallujah. On the road, we saw many Islamic State fighters and remnants of their battles. Abu Ahmed, Abu Hussein, and an aide lived in a Fallujah house that looked like a palace. Abu Ahmed kept telling me to convert, which I ignored. He tried to rape me several times, but I did not allow him to touch me in any sexual way. Instead, he cursed me and beats me every day, punching and kicking me. You know, that's okay to do in Islam because of Quran 4:34, which allows a man to beat his wife, even if he just fears rebellion from her. Of course, Muslims will say, no, that means just tap on them with a toothbrush. Beat lightly, you know, tap on them. No, it says beat. There's nothing about a toothbrush. And so, yeah, kicked me. He fed me only one meal per day. Shema and I began to discuss killing ourselves. We were given mobile phones and instructed to call our families. Their journey had been almost as hard as ours. They'd made it to Mount Sinjar, where ISIS surrounded them and tried to starve them to death. After 5 days under siege, Kurdish rescue forces evacuated them to Syria and then brought them back into northern Iraq. If they traveled to Mosul and converted to Islam, our captors our captors had us tell them we would be released. Understandably, they did not trust ISIS, so they did not make the trip. Yeah, I'll have to read that again. They made it to Mount Sinjar, where ISIS surrounded them and tried to starve them to death. After 5 days under siege, Kurdish rescue forces evacuated them to Syria and then brought them back to northern Iraq. If they traveled to Mosul and converted to Islam, our captors had us tell them we would be released. Understandably, they did not trust ISIS, so they did not make the trip. On our sixth day in Fallujah, Abu Ahmed and the aide left for business in Mosul. Abu Hussein, Shema's captor, stayed behind. Around sunset, after the sun ran to a resting place and set in the murky spring. Around sunset the next evening, he went to the mosque for prayers, leaving us alone in the house. Using our cell phones, we had contacted Mahmoud, a Sunni friend of Shema's cousin who lived in Fallujah, for help. It was too dangerous for him to rescue us from the house, so Shema and I used kitchen knives and meat cleavers to break the locks of the 2 doors to get out. Wearing traditional long black abayas that we found in the house, we walked for 15 minutes through town, which was quiet for evening prayers, which is, having your patootie on the prayer rug. Then Mahmoud came and picked us up on the street and took us to his house and took us to his home. That night, Mahmoud fed us and gave us a place to sleep. The next morning, he recruited a cab driver to take us all on a 2-hour ride to Baghdad. The driver said he was afraid of Islamic State, but offered to help us for Allah's sake. Well, it says God's sake, but it's saying Allah. But he offered to help us for God's sake. Hey, maybe he was a Christian. Yeah. No, his name was Mahmoud. We dressed like local women and covered our faces with the niqab, leaving only our eyes visible. Mahmoud gave us fake student IDs and a taqiyya in case we were stopped at checkpoints. I'd never felt so much anxiety. At each checkpoint, I was sure we'd be discovered. At one, I cannot recall if it was controlled by Islamic State or Iraqi forces. Mahmoud bribed the guards to let us through. We had contacted Yazidi and Muslim Kurdish family friends to help us in Baghdad. I cannot describe the dizzy sense of relief I felt when we arrived at their house. In Baghdad, the family friends gave us another pair of fake IDs. Yeah, more taqiyya. That enabled us to board a flight to Erbil, the capital of Kurdistan in the north. I still couldn't believe we were free until our plane touched the ground. After staying in Erbil overnight at the house of the Yazidi member of the Iraqi parliament, Dian Dakhil, we traveled north to Shakhan, to the residence of the Baba Sheikh, the spiritual leader of the world's Yazidis. After so much fear for so many days, hugging my dad again was the best moment of my life. He said he had cried for me every day since I disappeared. That evening we went to Kanki, where my mother was staying with her relatives. We hugged and kept crying until then I fainted. My month-long ordeal was over, and I felt reborn. But there more there are more bad news to come. That's when I learned that the Islamic State had shot my brother at the Oasis. My sister-in-law, a very beautiful woman, is still captive somewhere in Mosul. And she's probably being raped, because again, soon in Abu Dhabi 22050. Now I am trying to come to terms with what happened. I can never get again set foot in our little village, even if it's freed from Islamic State, because the memory of my brother who died nearby would haunt me too much. I still have nightmares and swoon several times a day when I remember what I saw or imagine what would have happened if Shaman and I hadn't escaped. What can I do? I want to leave this country altogether. This country is no place for me anymore. I want to go to a place where I might be able to start over, if that is even possible. Well, that's it. Of course, maybe that thing will kick in. Go up with Elon, besiege media. All that sign up I made to cease. Let's see if that happens. Bye.